On a quiet night, the brightness of the moon and stars made the atmosphere of the forest a little tense. Then, the sound of a baby crying was heard, breaking the silence of the night. Apparently, the baby's cry came from the area around the small gobo house in the middle of the forest. Along the road to the house, there were traps that had been neatly set up. Then someone was heard saying, "What is that? A baby crying? In a forest like this? There must be an intruder coming in." Then the man took an axe from his house and immediately checked where the baby's voice came from. In his object, the man suspected that it was an intruder, and he said that if they came to steal in my house, they were unlucky. They would end up in the hunter's house. The man with a muscular body then tried to check around his house. At that time, he thought that if the thief could avoid the trap he made, it meant he was not an ordinary thief. But he thought the thief wouldn't be able to trick his ears because he was a hunter. Then the man walked sneakily and looked careful. Then the man pushed the door and started a surprise attack. Then, when he managed to get into the cage, he was quite surprised when he found out that there was no one there, and the man said, "Huh? There's no one here?" Then the man thought, while saying, "Since I was told that we couldn't have children. I always hear strange sounds when he looks to the side. He is shocked by something. What is this?" And it turns out that someone has left the baby in that place without thinking twice. This man immediately let go of the axe he was holding, and immediately carried this poor baby to make sure whether this baby was still breathing or not, after making sure the condition of the baby. This man looked happy, as if the god had granted his wish all this time. Not long after that, a woman came to him, and this woman was his beloved wife, asking about the commotion that was happening around his house. Then, when she saw her husband carrying the baby, his wife then asked where her husband found the baby. This man was shaking so much he was confused about what to answer. A word suddenly came out of this man's mouth. "I think this is our baby." And the story of this comic begins. Let's continue again. It looks like a painting or picture there. At that time, something magical happened. He opened his eyes and waved his hand. Suddenly the wind blew and gathered clouds. Not long after that, rain started to fall from the clouds. Thanks to the clouds, the dry land then became wet, making all the villagers happy. The next picture is like a meteor falling. He also protects the village from threatening dangers. And with his magical powers, peace is created in the village. People are no longer thirsty and hungry. But he does not stop to research everything to help the villagers. And the villagers think his abilities are magical. Because of that, they call him a mage. The scene moves. Several years have passed. Someone has finished reading a book that tells the story of a mage. Then his father came and asked what the boy was doing. The boy with blonde hair was named Siren. A baby who was left in a cage is now 12 years old, and his father is a 40-year-old hunter. His name is Pinson. He really loves his son. Because Pinson's work has been completed, he now invites Siren to go home to eat on the way. Siren asks his father how someone can use magic. Hearing this, Pinson said there wasn't much to explain about magic. If you could knock down a bird with just one bow and arrow, or if you could knock down a tree with one swing of an axe, isn't that magic? "Ha ha ha," said Pinson while laughing, because he couldn't read and didn't know what magic was, so he explained it simply. Then there were several small children who saw Pinkin and Siren. At that time, they were talking about Siren who always read books. Even though they were playing together, they wondered about the big book that Siren brought and questioned whether Siren could read the book. They also said that Siren was very small and weak, unlike his father. People said that Siren was an adopted child from who knows where. Maybe Siren was abandoned because he was a strange child. Hearing that made Pinson very angry, and in his mind, he said, "How dare they say that about my son?" After that, Pinson looked at Siren anxiously, because he heard what the children said earlier. But at that time, Siren smiled happily while saying, "If you can fell a tree with one swing of the axe, that's magic, right?" Siren said while laughing, as if he didn't hear what the children were talking about. Then Pinson said that he would take him to town to buy some of his favorite fruits because Siren had helped with his work today. Siren at that time looked very happy with his father's invitation and felt impatient to hurry to the city at that time. Pinson said in his mind that he apologized for not being able to be a good father for Siren, and did not care about what people said, because Siren was his son. And at that time, Siren also really wanted to know more about magic the next day. The sky was so bright, a suburban town in the kingdom of Tormia, flanked by several mountains, looked so beautiful today. Siren was invited by his father to go shopping, a face full of joy. While looking at the contents of the city, Siren said, "Wow, so this is what a city is called. All kinds of goods, from primary to secondary needs, are sold in this city. It is truly a very busy city." They have now stopped in the middle of the market. Then Pinson said to Siren, "Siren, you have to wait at Grandpa Martin's shop until I finish with my business. I remind you once again that you are not allowed to go to a quiet alley alone or disturb the nobles. Understand?" said Siren's father with such anxiety while smiling. Siren said, "I know, don't worry," said Siren to convince his father. Then they separated here. His father went somewhere with his horse, carriage. Now Siren was seen writing information about fruit prices on a wooden board. Then he received praise from Grandpa Martin, because Siren could write. And Grandpa Martin said that Siren didn't need to bother helping him. Siren said, "It was okay, Grandpa. I just want to help." Then in his mind, Grandpa Martin thought that at this young age, Siren was already that smart. And in contrast to his son, who could only make trouble at an age like Siren. Then suddenly, Siren asked the grandpa, "Did Grandpa know about magic?" While laughing, Grandpa Martin said, "What?" "How to play music." While showing a book to Grandpa Martin with a funny face, Siren said, "No magic. How does someone use magic?" "Oh, you mean magic?" said Grandpa Martin while laughing. Siren's face was shining while waiting for Grandpa Martin's explanation about magic. At that time, Grandpa Martin said that he didn't know about magic. Then he pointed to a building and said that in that place there were many books that told about the things Siren asked. After hearing Grandpa Martin's advice, Siren immediately rushed to that place. At that time, Grandpa Martin told Siren to come back immediately. After finishing looking for something he was looking for there, Siren ran and said that he would be back soon. Not long after that, after Siren left, Grandpa Martin opened Siren's book. Grandpa Martin said that he often read fairy tales like that when he was little. Then, when he found out what was in the book, Grandpa Martin was very surprised and said, "What?" At that time, Grandpa Martin thought maybe what Siren meant was how to use magic to move Siren, who was now in the bookstore, when Siren wanted to take one of the books from the shelf. Suddenly, there was a woman who said, "Hey, why did you carelessly take the book with your dirty hands?" responding to the woman's words. Then Siren said, "Am I not allowed to peek at the contents of the book?" Then the woman said, with a slightly annoyed face, "These books are expensive. These are not intended for commoners. They are not the same as the books sold in cheap shops." The woman also continued to make fun of Siren by saying that she would not let Siren dirty the book and lowered the price. At that time, Siren wondered in his heart where his father could get his books all this time. Then an old man was seen coming into the shop and asking about the book he had ordered earlier. It turned out the man was the butler. Then the woman told the man, if the book he ordered was available. When he saw the book, Siren thought that all the books looked the same, and there wasn't much he could understand. Then, when he left the shop, Siren thought that he didn't think reading a book could be that difficult, even though he had already washed his hands. Then, suddenly, his gaze shifted when he saw a man carrying several books in his hands. Without thinking, Siren followed the man and asked questions. Was the man a nobleman at that time? He was curious about where the man took the books. It turned out the man threw the books he was carrying in the corner of the building. Seeing this, Siren was quite surprised by what the man did to the books. Then he took one of the books and thought that it turned out his father got his books from a place like this. After that, two noble women appeared who seemed to glance at Siren, which made Siren quite surprised. Because it was as if these two women were mocking Siren, who had picked up a book from the trash. Then, while looking at the noblemen, he thought about what the difference was between himself and the noblemen. Then he remembered his father's words about not disturbing the noblemen. At that time he thought why the nobleman could do everything, and he couldn't. When Siren was walking, Suddenly, a security guard stopped him. Then the guard said, "Hey, kids like you shouldn't be hanging around here. Behind this door, only nobles can enter. Where are you from? Where are your parents?" With a panic, Siren said, "Hey, I'm from around here." Then another officer said that Siren looked quite suspicious because according to the officer, Siren didn't look like a resident of this city. The officer also said, if it is possible that Siren is a child from an orphanage or a spy for the bandits, then the officer pulled Siren to come with him. When the officer tried to pull Siren, Siren suddenly disappeared who knows where and only left his jacket. The two guards planned to look for where Siren went. When they were busy looking for Siren's whereabouts, Siren managed to hide behind a flower plant. At that time, he felt relieved because he managed to escape from the officer's pursuit. While looking at his dirty clothes, Siren said that his father would definitely scold him if he knew his clothes were dirty. Then he saw his shoes were off and was going to take them while wearing his shoes. It turned out he heard a conversation about magic. In the conversation, it was heard that someone wanted to see the principal use his fireball magic. Hearing that made Siren quite scared and said, "Could this place be a magic academy?" Without thinking, Siren then eavesdropped on the conversation of the people from behind the wall. At that time, it was heard that the principal told his students that using fire magic in the academy was quite dangerous, but according to him, if they managed to answer his questions, he would show some of his magic techniques. At that time, it was seen that Siren was quite surprised to hear what they said from behind the wall. Then it was heard that the principal asked his students about what is most important in learning magic, and the answers from the students were varied. Some answered knowledge, some answered hard work, and some also said that money is also needed. They also said that a magician must learn magic all his life after hearing various answers from his students. The principal said that none of the answers were correct. Then the principal said that the most important talent in magic is insight. At that time, it was seen that Siren continued to listen to the conversation with a serious face. Then the students asked the principal about the meaning of insight. Then the principal asked his students, "Is there anyone here who doesn't know what the result of 1 plus 1 is?" They confidently said that they already knew the answer, which was 2. After hearing the answer from his students, the principal asked if anyone could explain why the result was 2. Then they were confused when asked why the result was 2. Then the principal explained that the strange feeling they felt was called insight. The principal explained that in ancient times, people did not know the result of 1 plus 1, and he also said that at that time, scholars worked hard to prove it. The principal also said that even though people did not have concrete and clear evidence, everyone could know that the answer to 1 plus 1 was 2, because it has become a law that always exists in this world. And that's why they don't need to study it to be able to accept the concept, because magic is also a law that exists in the world. From the beginning, we can feel and accept it through insight. That's why insight is more accurate than knowledge, and faster than hard work. Then one of the students asked, "Hey, can that make someone a genius?" Hearing that, the principal answered, "Ah ha ha ha, that's right. And if you hone your talent, you can also become a mage like that." Then in his mind, Siren said, "Mage, will an opportunity like that come to me?" Siren said in his heart. Suddenly the principal said, "That's right." The boy standing behind the wall, "I want to hear your opinion." Hearing the last words from the principal, Siren was very surprised then. In his mind he said, he realized, me? Should I run? Or should I answer him? My mind was in chaos at that time. Siren was very confused about what to do in that situation. At that time, he didn't know what they would do to him. But suddenly, he received a thought. If he didn't climb the wall now, maybe Siren would regret it forever. And Siren started to climb the wall when he looked inside. He was very surprised. It turned out that the place was very beautiful, with a very wide expanse of green grass, and it looked like there was an old grandfather with several small children of the same age as him. Then the principal said, "Did you come to meet this old man?" And it turned out that this old man was the head of the Alps Magic Academy, and had the title of Official Level 4 Wizard. Hearing the principal's words, then without hesitation, Siren jumped inside. Then when Siren stood in front of them, Suddenly several students tried to chase him away and said, "Hey, you can't come here, go there," said several students to Siren while pointing at him. Siren felt scared because he was kicked out by the students. Then the principal said that Siren could approach him and asked if Siren was interested in what he said earlier. Then Siren innocently said that he wanted to see magic, hearing Siren's words. The principal asked, "Oh, ho, ho, ho. Have you never seen magic?" Then Siren explained that he knew magic from the book he read, and he had never seen it directly. Hearing what Siren said, the student said that Siren was a liar, because according to them, it was impossible for commoners to read books. While lowering his head, Siren said, "Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Please show it to me." Then, while laughing, the principal said, "Ha ha ha ha. It's not difficult at all. I will show you a chant that can create wind." After hearing that, the students looked very enthusiastic and happy. Not long after that, Siren wondered where the big wind came from. Suddenly, they were all swept away by the wind and flew up together. They shouted happily when they were up. Not long after that, the wind stopped, and Siren was quite surprised when he found out that he was going to fall down. Then, when he almost touched the ground, Siren suddenly stopped and floated 1 meter above the ground. As a result, the other students laughed at Siren. Then the principal smiled and said, "How? That's magic." Siren was surprised by that, and then asked Magic, "What is that?" When the principal wanted to explain about magic, Siren said that even though he didn't understand, he still asked the principal to explain it and tell him the truth. Hearing Siren's words, the student said that Siren was rude to the principal, and according to them, even the teachers didn't dare to talk like that. Siren at that time was just silent, waiting for the explanation from the principal. Then the principal smiled while saying, "Ha ha ha ha. Then I will explain it. A little complicated. Magic is beyond common sense. Another way to explain it is a mental operation that explores the truth of reality." Then with a serious face, Siren explained that it was too difficult and irrational reality, but maybe because of that, it became closer to the truth. Then after hearing Siren's answer, the principal looked happy and asked if it was also written inside. Siren confidently said no. "I see similarities between the books. Many great people's ideas were considered irrational and avoided, but in the end, they were accepted as new information and new truths. So it's possible that the truth is actually hidden in that irrationality." I think the children were surprised by Siren's words. The principal smiled and said, maybe according to the principal, it was a possibility. Then suddenly Siren asked the principal, what should I do to be able to learn magic, when he heard that the principal said in his heart that Siren was a very brilliant child. According to him, even though it was difficult, Siren tried to find the right information to do his own research. While looking at Siren, the principal in his mind said again, was he really sure that he could do it? But unfortunately, he was a commoner. Then the principal said again, rather than explaining it would be better if I showed it. Then he called one of his students named Swamin to enter Spirit Zone mode. Then Swamin quickly agreed to the principal's request. Siren, who had just heard about the Spirit Zone for the first time, was clearly confused and wondered about it. Then Swamin said that he had entered Spirit Zone mode. After that, a blue aura was seen radiating from his entire body. The principal immediately asked about the number of coins in his hand. Then, the husband quickly said that there were 6 coins in the principal's hand while showing his hand. The principal said that the husband's answer was correct. Siren, who saw it at that time, was quite surprised because the husband managed to answer correctly. Then the principal explained that when a magician was focused, their minds will become sensitive enough to be able to feel everything around them. Extraordinary magicians are even said to be able to count the number of leaves on a tree from a distance. This is the mental condition of extreme sensitivity, namely the spirit zone. A magician who enters this zone will be aware of the outside world in a supernatural capacity and can dominate reality in the end. Then in his mind, Siren said that in Spirit Zone mode, they could feel the whole situation that was happening in front of him. Then Siren wondered if it was possible for him to be like those magicians. The principal told Siren that anyone could do it. Then he told Siren to practice in a quiet place. The first step was that Siren had to feel himself first, then erase his existence. The principal also added that, although anyone could do it, but not everyone is able to do it. Then he explained again to Siren. If he had succeeded in doing it, he would know a completely new world, and he would also know a different world that would open up enthusiastically. Siren said, if I can't feel myself, then it would be impossible for me to erase myself. Hearing Siren's question in his mind, the principal said, he keeps surprising me. Then the principal asked Siren, do you want to try it after saying that? In his mind, the principal thought that if Siren could not enter Spirit Zone mode, in the end, he would not be able to use magic at all. Then it was seen that Siren at that time was trying to feel himself. Then Siren began to feel himself at that time. He could feel his brain. Then he thought that the senses and reality that he felt, unable to go beyond the concept of the brain. Then he thought that the right thing was not to define it. Then slowly, he began to erase one by one. Everything that he felt was himself. Not long after that, he felt his existence became more sensitive. But only his sensitive thoughts would be left. Then Siren began to open his eyes. Then the principal asked about what he felt at that time. With a surprised face, Siren said that he heard voices from everywhere. Hearing what Siren said, the students laughed and said that if Siren was still alive, of course he would hear the voice at that time in his mind. The principal said that Siren could not do it as he expected. According to the principal, everything that happens in the spirit zone is in another dimension. Synesthesia is smelling, sound tasting, light, and feeling the shape of every skin on the body. While stroking Siren's head, the principal told him good job. If you keep practicing in the future, you will be able to hear more voices. Then the principal said that the special lesson for the day was over and invited the students to return to school while walking towards the school. In his mind, the principal said that it was a shame because Siren was a talented child. The principal also thought that if the child was born into nobility and trained since childhood, then it would not be impossible. If Siren is able to achieve something like his current students, he thinks there are many talented children in this world. Sim moves to show Siren, who is currently trying to jump over the wall to return to the city. While behind the wall, with a surprised face, Siren says that it really works. When Siren was about to return to his house, suddenly his vision changed all over his body. He was able to feel everything around him, even in a wider space. And this is the mental condition of extreme sensitivity called spiritual, where this mode is the mode of the penugir, able to feel everything around him. At this time he heard voices from all corners of the world. Maybe it was not a voice, but at this time Siren could not think of another way to express it. His body was torn apart and scattered all over the world, as if the world was telling him something. All the voices came together and finally became one when he remembered what the world had told him. One big truth hit his head in his mind. Siren said, "I am the world itself." A tear fell unstoppable. He couldn't do anything. Only the horrible feeling he felt at this time. Finally, he was able to feel this mode because of his persistence, his curiosity about something he called magic. After that, he closed his eyes and ran suddenly. When he ran towards the quiet alley, he accidentally bumped into someone who was big, causing him to bounce and fall. After that, he looked shocked by what he saw: several big thugs who stared sharply at him like a predator over its prey. When he realized he'd bumped into someone, then Siren said, "Hey, I'm sorry." Then the man who was hit by Siren started to grab his collar and said, "Hey, are you crazy?" At that time, Siren could only apologize for the mistake he made earlier. Then the man said, "If you make a mistake, it means you are ready to penetrate it. Are you the person sent by the wolf gang to kill me?" This man thought that Siren was a spy from the wolf gang. Suddenly, the accusation made Siren very, very scared. At this time, Siren could only deny the accusations made by the man. While intimidating Siren, suddenly a woman's voice was heard saying, "What are you doing? Is there something interesting?" They all turned towards the voice. Then the man said, "Miss Amy, why are you here? Maybe you're bored." Then in his mind, Siren felt as if he had met his savior, and he had to ask for help. But suddenly, a nobleman, and still young, he said to himself, because according to Siren, the clothes he was wearing were like the clothes of the nobles he had ever seen. Then the man said that Siren tried to kill him, and he wanted to punish him. Siren at that time defended himself by saying that he accidentally hit the man. Hearing that, the man immediately kicked Siren until he fell. Siren was seen crawling, holding back the pain. The man continued to make fun of Siren and asked for compensation for the incident earlier, and he also told Siren to call his mother, who had given birth to a perverted child. It seemed like a decision full of anger from Siren. The look in his eyes now changed, but suddenly they immediately beat Siren mercilessly. Siren could only protect his head and face when a series of kicks rained down on him. After that, Amy told them to stop beating him, because according to Amy, he could die if he was beaten like that. Then, Amy approached him and asked Siren if he was okay. Then Siren said that he was okay because he didn't do it on purpose. At that time, Amy looked at Siren's face, who was crying after being beaten by a group of men. Then Amy turned to the group and said to them, "Don't you have something more exciting?" Siren, who at that time thought he would be released, was quite surprised by what Amy said. The gang said to Amy, "Yes, we are going to beat him up and then sell him to a village in the south. And he is also a commoner, so there is no need to worry about the consequences." When he heard that, Siren was shocked and could only cry in his mind while calling his mother and father's name. While looking at Siren, Ami said, "A Buddha must be perfect, right?" "Yes, let's confirm." That after hearing what Ami said, the gang said that Siren should immediately take off his clothes, and if Siren didn't do it, they would beat him. Seeing what the gang did in his mind, Ami said, "Take it off." "What do they mean?" "I just want to see his face." At that time, Ami asked in her heart, "And why did he act like that, even though I wanted to let him go after teasing him a little?" At that time, Ami was actually quite afraid that Siren was starting to lose his mind. Then I saw Siren's face, which looked scared. Then, without realizing it, Siren suddenly entered Spirit Zone mode. This all happened because at that time he felt panicked and was very sensitive to the violence his body experienced for the first time. Suddenly, time stopped. All the activities around him froze. Extreme sensitivity happened to him now. He could feel everything around him. Siren saw his memory when he received the teaching about the wind spell. So that the principal showed him in the academic yard. So all the essence of the memory and information entered his head. Then Siren was still absorbing all the information in Spirit Zone mode. He who had bullied him shouted to this bastard Siren, "Are you deaf? Do I look like I'm joking to you?" Then Siren was seen, who was unconscious due to the Spirit Zone mode when he realized there was something strange about Siren's settings. Almi told them to stop. Not long after that, they were all suddenly thrown up, and it turned out that Siren had accidentally used the magic he saw in his memory when he entered the Spirit Zone. The screams of the gang made Siren's consciousness return. And when he saw them, he was shocked by what he saw at that time. The men were thrown up, and then all of them fell back down, because of the effect of gravity. It was seen that the gang screamed in pain after falling from a height. Some of their grandfathers had broken arms, and some even died on the spot. At that time, Siren did not think that he could make such a big mess. Then, after seeing that, with a shocked face, Ami shouted, "Hey, you! Who are you really? Where did you learn magic? Why haven't the commoners Ami spoken finished?" It was seen the guards came running to the location after hearing the screams in the alley. Ami, who saw this, immediately ran away by jumping onto the building. Siren, who saw it at that time, was quite surprised and wondered, "Huh? How can you move like that?" When the guard was about to approach him, Siren looked behind him and looked at the group at that time. In his mind he said, if no one would believe the reason he said, then quickly Siren ran away from the gang. While running in his mind, Siren called his father's name, and he said that this world felt very cold for him. Sin moved to a mansion belonging to a Class 1 nobleman named the Karmas family. At that time, Ami felt annoyed because she did not expect that the gang of men would be defeated by a small child. Then a man asked, "Ami, You came home early today? Did you run away from class again, Ami?" This man is Karmis Sakura, a leader of the Karmas family, and is Amy's father. Ami was seen cleaning her clothes from the dust that stuck to it. After hearing her father's words, Ami said, "I have studied everything. Nothing can interest me." Then her father answered, "When will she grow up? Even if you are a genius, if you are reckless like that, you will lose your way later." Hearing what his father said earlier, Ami was quite surprised by that, and was silent for a moment. Then his father was quite confused by Ami's attitude because it was not usual for Ami to act like that. After that, Ami looked at his father and said, "If you know someone who works at the Magic Academy, can you introduce me to them?" Sin moved. Winter has arrived. A residence in a village. Precisely from the house of the siren, family snow fell so heavily that it filled the roof tiles of the settlement. "Siren, siren. Where are you?" A voice was heard calling Siren's name. It turned out to be the voice of Pinson, who was looking for where Siren had gone. His wife said that Siren had gone to the logging area, and Siren told his mother that he wanted to pick up some wood when he heard his wife's words. Pinson wondered how it could be in a snowy season like this. Siren instead went to look for wood. Then Pinson said that he would go look for Siren while on the way. Pinson thought that last spring when he took Siren to the city. For the first time, Pinson almost lost him at that time. Siren said that he was just lost, but seeing Siren's reaction, Pinson wondered about what actually happened that time. And this time Pinson didn't want that incident to happen again. Sin moved back to the logging area. It was seen that Siren was concentrating before trying to cut down a tree. At that time he thought about the Siri that he had unconsciously cast on the gang in the city. At that time, Siren thought that after that day, he could not use that kind of magic anymore. He did not know, because the middle part of the insight that was known at that time disappeared. Suddenly Siren thought that the cause was because he did not have knowledge about magic. But even so, Siren thought that he could still use the spirit zone. When he started to enter spirit zone mode, Siren felt everything around him was much more sensitive than before, such as touch, shape, and even aroma. At that time, he could feel every inch of the big tree in front of him. Not long after, he saw a vital point on the tree that looked shining in his current spiritual mode. He thought that he could feel it, and immediately swung his axe towards the point he had seen in spirit zone mode. And unexpectedly, the tree was destroyed with just one attack. After realizing that the tree he had cut was destroyed with just one swing of the axe, he felt that it was magic. Then, on the other side, Vincent was seen, who thought he saw the incident from behind the tree. He was shocked by what Siren did at that time. Then Vincent said, "What I just saw was a thunderstrike. Let's explain about this thunderstrike, dude." Thunderstrike is a phenomenon where a tree falls in one attack, where the weak point of the tree is targeted. It is called a thunderstrike because the sound produced is like the sound of thunder. After that, Vincent continued to observe what Siren did that day. Then while cutting the tree, he cut down in his mind. Siren said that it was the first time he succeeded out of hundreds of attempts, just like magic that day. Then, Vincent was seen being moved when he saw the extraordinary talent that his adopted son had. Siren thought at that time that he did not need a coincidence, but what was needed was only certain knowledge, and Siren would repeat it tomorrow, and the following days would be repeated endlessly, for the opportunity that would come one day. The scene moved after that incident. How many years had passed? A young man was seen sitting on a tree stump, as if he was enjoying the surrounding atmosphere. Then he got up from his seat, and it turned out that this man was Siren, who was now 15 years old, while covering the tree he was going to cut down. He said, "You didn't see it with your eyes." Siren was trying to cut down the tree, using the spirit zone that he had trained for the past 3 years. Immediately he took a step with a swing of his axe, while saying again, "But by feeling it with your eyes," and with a sound like lightning striking after Siren swung his axe. Siren is getting more proficient in mastering his spirit zone this time, while looking at the fallen tree. Siren thought that he almost went home empty-handed, and only did meditation. Not long after that, he realized that he had been practicing for 5 hours non-stop when entering Spirit Zone mode. Siren felt that he was at one with the nature around him. Siren was able to feel the swaying bushes, the wriggling worms, even the sound of the tree absorbing nutrients from its roots. Even the time that Siren spent for 5 hours felt not enough for him to enjoy everything. Then he remembered what the headmaster of the Magic Academy said about a new world that would be revealed if it was possible. Then Siren concluded that a different world was the most appropriate description after that. While carrying quite a lot of pieces of wood on his shoulder, Siren walked towards home. Then when he arrived at his house, he saw several white horses eating. While tidying up the wood he was carrying, Siren saw a luxurious horse carriage and wondered if there were any guests at his house. Siren then went into the house and was surprised to see his father and mother talking to the guest. After realizing that Siren had returned, his father said to Siren, "Siren, you've come back here, and who is he?" It turned out that the old man was the assistant butler of the Awaken family named Temuran. Then the old man introduced himself to Siren. "Nice to meet you. Call me Temuran." Siren immediately straightened his body and introduced himself to Temuran. "This is the first time I have met you. My name is Siren." And Temuran said his intention was to meet Siren. At that time, Siren wondered why people who work under the second-class nobles in the kingdom came to meet him. Then, holding Siren's chin, Temuran said, "I will see you first. Do you know how to read?" Then Siren said, "I've been able to do it a little since I was little." After that, Temuran turned Siren's body over as if he was paying attention to something. At that time, Siren asked Temuran, "Can you explain what you did?" Then Temuran answered Siren's question. "You seem to have a good reputation. You are the son of a woodcutter, but you can read. You are also a good child. Do you have any intention of working for the House of Ogden?" When he heard it, Siren was quite surprised by the invitation to work for the Ogden family. Temuran also explained that we planned to move books from the grid library. There were almost 10,000 books in total, and there were important books that had to be collected. The work would take 2 years for the transfer to be done by someone else, but the selection of books would only be done by the two of us. After hearing that, Siren thought that what was meant was the large library of the Ogden family. There must be a lot of useful knowledge for him, especially regarding magic. Then Temuran said that this work should only be known by Siren's family, and if there was one book leaked or news about this spread, Siren and his family would die. While seeing his father and mother, Siren finally realized that behind his parents' gloomy faces was because of that. Then Temuran explained that the Ogden family would give a lot of money to Siren and his family. At that time, Temuran told Pinson that the amount of money was an amount that he could not get just by paying. After hearing Temuran's words, Pinson shouted and said, "I do not accept your request because my money is I only want Siren to achieve his dream," said Pinson while gasping for breath. While laughing, Temuran said that Pinson was just boasting about his son's dream and asked Pinson to stop dreaming about Temuran. Also questioned why Pinson offered him. If it wasn't for money, why Pinson asked to use Siren with annoyance? Pinson said because of Temuran's previous statement where he said that Siren could read. Then Temuran confirmed it, and he explained that even though Siren could read, it was impossible for him to keep an eye on Siren forever. Then Temuran drew a conclusion about the dream that Pinson had said earlier and asked Pinson, "You said earlier that you wanted him to achieve his dream. Have you been lying to your child like this all this time?" A moment after listening to Temuran's words, Pinson remembered when Siren was little. At that time, his wife only taught him a few words to entertain him, but after he was 6 years old, Siren started reading books to learn. According to Pinson, at that time, Siren seemed to really like reading books, and he realized that Siren was a smart child. At that time, Pinson wondered if Siren had noble blood, and he imagined that if Siren was raised in a noble family, then Siren could go to school. Then in his mind, Pinson said, "No, what am I thinking right now? Siren is my son. It is true that the son of a woodcutter will learn how to work in the mountains. But when Siren started working in the mountains, I was afraid not. In the end, I just raised him to become a woodcutter." Sin moved. There was a flashback to the moment before Temura's arrival at Siren's house. At that time, Siren's father knelt down to Temuran and said that Temuran was looking for a commoner who knew how to read Pinson. He asked Temura to choose Siren because Siren had been able to read since childhood and was also smart. At that time, Pinson also asked to let Siren read some books, and the flashback ended with Pinson shouting, "I don't need a single penny from you. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have begged on my knees in front of you. Get out of my house now. Pinson snapped at Teruran with tears streaming down his face. Then, in a high tone, Vincent said, Get out of my house now. Vincent, who at that time overheard Temuran's conversation about Siren having to stop pursuing his dreams, felt very annoyed, and he firmly kicked Temuran out of his house at that time. Vincent also said not to arbitrarily insult his family just because they were poor and not from the noble class. Then, in his mind, Temuran said that at that time there was nothing he could do. And according to him, the Siren family didn't know their position, so it was easy for them to suddenly think about it. Siren said to Vincent that he agreed to become a librarian in the Awaken family. Temuran looked at that time quite surprised by Siren's decision. The same thing his father felt when he heard his son's decision. Hearing what Siren said, Temuran also told Siren that he didn't mean to scare him, but if there was a small mistake later, will cause the death of Siren and his family with a calm face. Siren said that he had no problem with this, and he said that he would do it. Siren also promised that if there was any small problem, he would not reveal it, and he would not blame Temuran if that happened. Then, before leaving, Temuran said that he would return within a week, and Siren was asked to think carefully about his offer. Temuran also said that Siren could cancel it. Even though he had arrived there, if the contract had been signed, Siren was not allowed to go home before his work was finished. Shortly after the meeting left, Vincent questioned Siren's reason for accepting such a dangerous job, because according to Vincent, they were only looking for people to sacrifice, and he said that he would be responsible if Siren refused. Then, while crying, Siren thanked Vincent for giving him a very beautiful gift. Then, while hugging Siren, Vincent told him not to worry, because he would protect Siren. Vincent also told Siren to go and come back safely, because he had promised to take care of his family in his journey. Vincent said whether he had finally become a good father for Siren. It was seen that they were all crying, hoping for the best for Siren. Then a week passed. It was seen that Vincent was signing the contract brought by the Awaken family. Then, after handing over the contract, Vincent's face was seen to be very worried about Siren's future fate. When he was entering his horse carriage, Siren turned to his family with a sad expression. Not long after, the carriage headed towards the Awaken family residence. Then, while in the carriage, Siren looked gloomy after realizing that he would leave his family for 2 years. Then, Siren activated his sprint zone mode and felt that his parents were crying over his departure. Then Siren convinced himself to continue to load his heart, because this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as well as a double-edged sword for him. At that time, Siren wondered if he could survive for 2 years among those who had very strong power. The Awaken family was the second largest family in the Tormia kingdom. The Awaken family had produced many swordsmen who had been tested for dozens of generations. The previous head of the family was a swordsman who received a level 3 royal certificate, and the current head of the Awaken family is a 4th level knight. The conclusion is that the Awaken family is a great family in military affairs in the city. Not long after the servant told Siren that they had arrived at the Awaken family residence. From a distance, it looked like a luxurious mansion with a very large yard. At that time, Siren was very surprised to see the extraordinary view. Then one of the servants asked him if at that time he was starting to feel afraid. And another servant warned his colleague not to talk like that, if he didn't want to be executed while walking to his workplace. Siren felt very amazed by the second largest noble house in the kingdom. Not long after they arrived at Siren's workplace, the servant said that besides being a workplace, the place was also used as a residence for servants like them. Then, at that time, Temuran was seen waiting for Siren in his workroom. While walking, Temuran said that he would explain the task that Siren would do, and Siren said that he would do his best. Not long after, they arrived at the Awaken family's private library. At that time, he was amazed by the luxury of the many books in that place. Then, Temuran explained that they would move the books, and Siren's job was to sort the books. Temuran also said that he would provide a list of his books every week and asked Siren to look for and sort them. Temuran also explained that his working hours were from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and after that, Siren could do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't go out. Timorin also warned Siren not to go in and out of the mansion without special notice. Then, while handing over several documents, Timorin said that the servant would explain all the rules in that place. At that time in his mind, Siren said that it was like risking his life. Then the scene moved to the next day, when it was seen that Siren was wearing a maid uniform and was carrying some documents when he was about to start doing his job. Siren thought that he finally knew the reason why there was only one person who would do the task according to Siren. Because sorting it had to be consistent. For example, if Siren was sorting the swordsmanship history book, then it can be categorized as history, or it can also be categorized as swordsmanship. And it all depends on the sorter. And according to Siren, what he learned when creating the sorting system was that all knowledge is connected to each other. Siren also thinks that all the foundations of science come from history. Siren finally decided to study history first. According to him, it can shorten the time needed to learn other knowledge. Siren had also calculated that among the 10,000 books in that place, there were 850 books containing history books. Then Siren said that he would read all the history books within 2 years to achieve his dream of becoming a poet. While thinking about it, suddenly, Siren heard that the door in the library was opened by someone, and in his mind, he wondered whether it was the deputy butler or not. Then Siren said that he should not have shown, if he was reading a book on history questions earlier, because according to him, it would not be officially permitted while writing the book that Siren had been working on that day. Timorin appreciated Siren for his hard work. Timorin also asked Siren whether he was working overtime this time, and Siren confirmed this then. While walking away from Siren, Timorin said that the journey was still long, and advised Siren to maintain his body condition, because everything was Siren's responsibility then. After seeing Siren, Timorin approached him again, with a serious face in his mind. Siren wondered if he had been caught reading some books. Then, while cleaning the dust on Siren's clothes, Timorin told him that besides the workers who came to that place, sometimes the head of the Awaken family, and also the young master, also visited the place. Timorin warned Siren not to lower the dignity of the Awaken family. Ignoring his appearance, Timorin also asked Siren to cut his hair, and Siren accepted Timorin's request. After Siren found out about the misunderstanding about him, he finally felt relieved, and according to him, he had to be more careful in the future. Siren also thought that he had to be careful so that they could not find out his mistakes. Then, when he was reading several books about the history of the kingdom, he felt that it was very difficult. He thought that the history of the Tormia kingdom was already difficult enough, and he wondered how he could learn it all. At that time, he thought whether he should just memorize the important parts or not. Then, he decided to study every line if he wanted to retrieve his memory any time. While thinking about it, Siren unconsciously fell asleep at his workplace. Then, not long after, Timorin was seen coming, then took the book he was reading while saying, "Oh my gosh, he's so stupid. I can't believe he read the same book for half a month. Did he think he could improve just by studying at that time?" At first, Timorin thought to ban him from entering that place while walking out. Timorin said finally, "I can calm down, because he's just a fool who has big dreams." 3 months have passed since the day Siren started working as the Awaken family librarian. It was seen that Siren had started to get used to his job, and he also got some small information from the male servants there. Then there was a servant who said that he wanted to borrow the book he was holding, and Siren said that the second young master also borrowed the book. But according to Siren, if the young master had not returned the book they took last time, Siren also said that if the servant lost it, then it will make things difficult for him. The servant also confirmed what Siren said about it, and the servant said that he had asked them about it, but they said that they would return it themselves while holding his head. The servant said that actually the nobles would never worry if their books were lost, and the ones who should worry are servants like Siren. And the most surprising thing is that the nobles don't care if their books are leaked. According to Siren, there might not be any important books in the library, and the servant told Siren not to tell anyone that he had spoken about it when the servant left. Siren thought that it didn't mean that he wasn't in the same difficult position as the other servants. Siren also thought that the nobles were just being easygoing at the moment. The fact was that the commoners were the ones who had to risk their lives for things that even the nobles wouldn't remember. He also thought that the servants were being a little cruel in order to avoid the slightest mistake while doing his job. Siren said that whether the nobles cared about him or not didn't matter, because he thought that living quietly was the best choice for him. Then suddenly, a man's voice screamed, and the man ran inside while saying, "Damn it, you old man." Siren, who was currently focused on his job, was very surprised by the man's attitude, and he wondered about what really happened then. With a gasp, he said that he wanted to rest when he saw the man Siren finally found out that he was the youngest son of the Awaken family. It turned out that at that time, he was running away from the training he was undergoing when he met Siren. He told him not to tell him that he was hiding in that place. Not long after that, he started hiding under Siren's work desk. When the man entered under the table where Siren was working, suddenly a voice was heard. "I know you're hiding here." A bold old man was seen calling someone's name. While looking at Siren, he said, "You're a bald man as tall as a peanut with blue hair. Come in here, right?" Siren said in his heart. If the blue-haired boy is as tall as a peanut, the old man saw how big I was. Then Siren said, "From what I see, he looks like the last young master." "But I'm sorry, who are you?" Siren asked the bald man. While putting on a serious face, the man answered, "I am a swansman instructor. I am a teacher who will teach that peanut a lesson. You better tell me straight away, unless you want me to beat you up." So that's what Siren said while sweating cold. Then unexpectedly Siren said to the old man, "The last young master was hiding under the bookshelf over there." Siren said, while pointing to the place then. After knowing that Siren told his teacher that he was hiding in that place, Ryan said, "Are you crazy? Are you tired of living?" Then the teacher lifted Ryan from his hiding place, and Ryan said that it was a misunderstanding. Then the teacher dragged Ryan to come with him, and the old man said, "Come here, you Bokanaka. Apparently, your mental needs to be trained again." Then, while looking at Siren, Ryan said, "Watch out, I'll get back at you later." At that time, Siren thought that his actions were correct, because as far as he knew, the instructor had the power given by the head of the family, so he had no other choice. According to the humor that was circulating, Ryan would be taken to the mountains to be trained for a month. At that time, Siren needed 20 days, but after understanding the first book he read, he managed to read 82 books in 4 months. Then, Siren said that something like that was as he had expected before, because only the beginning was difficult, because none of the books contained new information. Siren also thought that if he succeeded in making a foundation with 200 books first, then he would easily digest the remaining 650 books. When Siren was reading a history book, he began to feel doubt, and he thought whether just reading history books was the right choice for him. But when he studied the activities of magicians in the past, he became more convinced that he had chosen the right decision. According to him, if scholars created a theory, then magicians would be the ones to realize that theory in the real world. After knowing that, Siren thought that scholars and magicians could be said to be the same. But according to him, not all scholars are magicians, because they cannot enter Spirit Zone mode. With Siren's Spirit Zone, he intended to accumulate a vast amount of knowledge, which would eventually form a new framework. And perhaps Siren could become a true mage. Just as Siren closed the book he had been reading, the library door was broken open again, this time at night. Ryan had apparently returned from his month-long training session. Having broken through the door, Ryan immediately yelled at Siren and called him a jerk. Ryan told Siren that he had been going through hell all this time, waiting for this day to come. Ryan looked very upset, and his clothes were also in tatters. Siren had no idea that young Master Ryan was actually quite disgusted by his ambition. Siren then asked young Master Ryan if he had truly returned here for that reason alone. Ryan firmly replied, "Of course it was for that reason." He told Siren that the hardships he had endured were certainly something he had never known before. Ryan had been ordered to climb a cliff every day, and he had been climbing relentlessly. And every time his fingers cramped, and he thought he was going to die, Ryan persisted in his quest for revenge against Siren. Siren seemed quite shocked to learn that the young master's anger had reached the point of killing him. This was even worse than Siren had initially imagined. Seeing Siren remain silent, Ryan asked him again if Siren currently thought Ryan was doing all this because he was just having a little difficulty during training. He emphasized that at the time, Ryan had only asked Siren for help so he could hide under his bookshelf, and Ryan had trusted Siren with that. Unexpectedly, however, Siren still denounced him to the monster despite being given responsibility. Just thinking about it made Ryan want to vomit. Siren truly was a coward in Ryan's eyes now. Siren replied that he had no intention of betraying young Master Ryan. He only said the truth for young Master Ryan's own good. Ryan, who heard Siren reply to his words, immediately grabbed Siren by the collar of his shirt, while telling him not to think he is right. Siren should have told him that at that time, Siren absolutely refused to grant his request. Siren, who was currently being threatened, immediately said in his heart, "If it were easy for those who have power to listen to logic that they themselves think is right, a commoner like Siren, inevitably forced to obey his commands." Tired of thinking about it, Siren asked young Master Ryan what to do now. Seeing Siren's calm demeanor surprised Ryan. Ryan knew Siren was a servant who had only worked for his family for a few months. However, his calm demeanor made it seem as if he had been working in his field for quite some time. Ryan then started to grin, kicking out an order to Siren. Ryan knows that Siren is currently underestimating him. Therefore, Siren was asked by Ryan to come with him for a while. Ryan intends to show Siren who young Master Ryan really is. So, on that moonlit night, the two of them now came out of the library and started walking towards the practice area. Siren certainly knew about this place, because he had lived in this noble residence for several months. Siren thought that if young Master Ryan intended to teach him to his heart's content, he would have no problem taking all of young Master Ryan's attacks. It would be better than being executed by him. Siren couldn't waste the opportunity his parents had given him to give his life for the nobles. Siren looked quite pensive as he considered this. A moment later, young Master Ryan threw a wooden sword at Siren. Siren quickly picked it up and began to examine it closely. Siren was confused as to why he was given a wooden sword. Young Master Ryan then pointed the sword at Siren and demanded a duel. Ryan once again reiterated that he was not a coward like Siren, and to repay Siren for his disdain for him all this time. Then he, destined to become the greatest swordsman, would face Siren in this duel. Siren, who had been called a coward, immediately shouted and retorted young Master Ryan's remarks. Siren, as a servant of the House of Awaken, was obligated to protect the dignity of the Awaken family. Ryan then retorted that Siren's fatal mistake was betraying him and siding with his master for fear of being punished. Ryan did not expect that when he was in trouble, Siren would easily betray him and side with the master. Ryan's current attitude immediately changed, and his eyes seemed to glow. Siren suddenly became quite doubtful when he saw Ryan's eyes change suddenly. Ryan again added that even though his family looked down on him, he still didn't want to be treated the same by a servant like Siren. Ryan with an evil smile told Siren to fight him. And considering the caste difference between the two, Ryan tried to be kind and gave Siren permission to attack first, 3 times. The look in young Master Ryan's eyes at this moment perfectly reflected the nature of an Awaken. Siren understood that his wooden sword seemed sturdy enough, but if even one of his bones broke here, he would be sent home immediately. Siren was at a loss for what to do now. All he could think about right now was that Siren would attempt to land 3 attacks on Ryan. A moment later, Siren raised his sword and prepared to strike Ryan, but Ryan easily deflected Siren's attack. This attack was already Siren's only chance. Siren was quite surprised to face a force he had never encountered before. Siren then tightened his grip again and launched a second attack at Ryan. But of course, Siren's second attack was also easily blocked by Ryan. Ryan smiled again and called out the number 2. Ryan then started laughing in Siren's face, asking if Siren had ever held a sword before. Siren didn't answer. His sweat was now clearly visible. Siren now had only 1 chance left. Siren then activated his skill, attempting to attack Ryan while he was in the spirit zone. All of Ryan's particles were now clearly visible in Siren's eyes. His blue aura was immense and dazzling. Siren then shifted his stance and attacked Ryan from above. Seeing Siren change his stance, Ryan immediately screamed. This time, it seemed he would immediately block the attack. Two wooden swords clashed. From now on, Siren's chance to attack him was definitely over. Now it was Ryan's turn to counterattack. However, just as Ryan said that, his wooden sword suddenly made a cracking sound and shattered right before Ryan's eyes. Ryan was shocked by what happened. He hadn't expected Siren's final attack to shatter his wooden sword in a single swing.